This is Over 50s Wisdom, a channel dedicated to people from all over the world, over 50, with real stories to tell. And my guest today is Mick. Mick, what's your story?
My story, and I'm pleased that people want to hear it, if indeed they do. Um, I'm 62 years old. Um, I've had a varied career. I was a soldier for 10 years, a prison officer for 10 years, and then I worked in the NHS for 10 years. And I was very lucky that I was able to retire at the age of 50.
Wow, that is very
Now,
lucky. I've got to tell you,
Oh,
very lucky.
yes, yeah. Retired very early. I tell people, yes, I have to. So that was what, about 12, coming up to 13 years, coming up to 13 years ago now. Now that retirement was absolutely fantastic. Um, I did what I wanted to do. One of my passions is history, antiques, research, and I, I was spending my life going around antique fairs, um, just pootling really, charity shops, doing a bit of selling on eBay as well, the Evil Bay, bits and pieces. And then suddenly, the other thing, yes, suddenly out of the blue, um, I January 2019, I was feeling unwell. I had an extremely bad cold and it didn't go away. And it was with me for probably 3 or 4 weeks. So I went to the doctor. The doctor took a blood test. There was something not right with it, but they couldn't put their finger on, or he wouldn't. He said it wasn't important. Um, Interestingly, one of the first things he said was, "Don't worry, it's not cancer." Okay, so you can see where I'm going with this now. So um, I had a follow-up blood test. I'd been to the gym. I keep myself fit. I've always been fit. I've been to the gym in the morning, 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the morning. I'd done a spin class. 8:30 that morning, I went to the doctors for another blood test. Had that blood test. I was feeling perfectly well at that stage. No symptoms at all. Um, Apart from a couple of boils, bit of an itchy rash. That was it. I had, I was fit. I was feeling well. The doctor phoned me later on that evening, and he said to me, "Get yourself to the A&E department at Grimsby Hospital. A haematology consultant wants to speak to you."
You mean
Now
get
that obvious
straight away?
straight away.
Really?
So I waited for my wife to come in. We went straight up there. He had a little room in the A&E department that he'd set aside. We walked in. He stood up. He came over, shook my hand, and he said, "You've got acute myeloid leukemia, which is a
Okay.
blood cancer, a serious blood cancer that affects the cells." Now, I was, well, obviously quite taken aback. Um, he said to me, he then said, "I'm going to admit you immediately." So, okay. So again, I looked at him again, and he said, "Have you got your pajamas?" I thought, well, up until this point, I thought, well, why would I need my pajamas? He actually said he relented then, and he said he would admit the following morning. So I was admitted to Castle Hill Hospital up at Hull the following day, and they did, well. They took so many blood tests. They did a bone marrow biopsy, which is extremely painful in the hip, and they confirmed my diagnosis that day. They actually couldn't believe how well I was feeling, and the fact that I was still going to the gym, because my bloods were so low. I needed 2 blood transfusions that day,
I mean, that's quite
and I
remarkable.
so
That really is quite remarkable.
oh, absolutely. I mean, the I was then in hospital. I wasn't out of hospital then for 7 weeks. They
Gee,
kept me in for 7 weeks. Everything goes on hold. You can't make any plans. Any plans have gone. The only Because of the risk that I had of infection, because the chemotherapy started almost immediately. Um, so your immune system is completely shot. The only visitor I could have was my wife. that was it. And got through that. After those 7 weeks, I was then back in and out of hospital, continually having blood transfusions, blood platelets to build the system up. And eventually, after about a year, I was feeling a lot better. And I'd made a promise to myself during that time when I was starting to feel better, and the prognosis didn't feel as bad to me. Because the worst thing that you can possibly do if you're given any medical diagnosis is Google it. Do not Google it, because it terrifies you. My background in the trades I've already said, in the army, I trained as a nurse in the army. I was a medic in the prison service, and I worked for the NHS. So I have a background. And to my mind, when I worked on an oncology ward, 30 years ago, everybody with my diagnosis died, and that's all I could think about.
Now, this it brings us on to mental strength here.
Yeah.
I mean, did you really have to work your mind to convince your mind not to go back 30 years and to relive those experiences that you saw? How did you deal with that?
I think taking the advice. I know people. In fact, somebody put a message onto the Facebook there talking about an alternative therapy. I don't agree with those at all. Conventional medicine, it has got me where I am. So what I had to do was listen to the doctors and take advice. I also followed the advice of the hematologist that actually gave me that first diagnosis. Was life goes on. Regardless of what's happening to you, life goes on around you. And I looked at it this way: involve yourself in that life. Don't put yourself into a bubble, because once you're in that bubble, and I experienced this, it's lonely, really lonely.
How do you get out of that bubble? How do you expand the bubble? How do you break through it?
Right. Okay. That's involving finding interest. So something as simple as you've got your iPad there, watching box sets, for example. Keep yourself occupied. Books were brought in. And as I say, I mean, I'm a researcher, so I continued that. I was still able to do that. People would still contact me and ask, can I research a particular soldier? And I could do that. So it doesn't take the mind off of it completely, but it takes you away from that isolation and that diagnosis that's there. So your family life goes on.
Nick, do you think differently about family life now then? When you were going through this, was it like, I've heard this before, like a curtain opening and actually seeing the light when it came to family and the small things in life?
In a way.
For granted, I don't know.
Yes, it was. But not just family life, it's the friends that you've got around you as well. I had fantastic support, even from people that I wasn't expecting it. I mean, I explained that I'd been to a spin class on the morning of my diagnosis. Now, that was interesting. I'd been going to that same spin class 4 days a week for probably about four years. I didn't know the people on it. I knew them from that spin class. But suddenly, one of them contacted me because I'd actually sent her a message to say, unfortunately, I won't be on the next class, and also the instructor, and told them exactly what was happening. Now, the support that I had from those people was fantastic. In fact, the lady that used to sit next to me, she would never let anybody sit on my bike. She would. It's just little things like that that mean so much. And I'd also planned that after the year was up, I would go back to that class and sit on that bike, and I did.
Okay, 2 questions arise from what you've just said. One, you were at a spin class the day you were admitted for a dreadful cancer. So first question is, that obviously you had a high physical fitness level.
Yeah.
One question is, obviously, I think I know the answer. Was that highly important? Did that help you get through the fact that you were physically fit before the diagnosis? And then secondly, I find it interesting that you told the spin class about your condition.
Yeah.
People don't really know you. Is it important to tell people about a condition like this?
Yes. Um, uh, Apart from my wife, who was with me constantly, she's an angel. I've got to say that because she will watch this back. But
Oh,
she's an angel. It was actually nice to tell strangers, acquaintances, and I don't really know why. I really don't know why. And that relationship, then having those messages from those people to support me was great. And the lady that took the class, I mean, I went to other classes as well. I mean, I always thanked her for actually helping get me through it, because being fit and healthy must help you through. For this particular cancer, there's no direct reason why I would have been affected by it. I've never smoked. I don't drink heavily. I've always led a fit, healthy life, but it could be caused by chemicals. One of the issues is radiation. Nobody really knows how it would affect that individual unless I've been directly working with something. But that strength, yes, it must help.
On the subject of talking about it, if somebody's watching this now and they know somebody who's been diagnosed with an illness like yours, they may feel like awkward to get in touch with them. Should they reach out to them? Do you think that would be
Yes,
helpful for the person suffering?
yes, and you've hit the nail on the head. Then other people don't know how to approach you. And again, I've been lucky that the people that are closest to me know me extremely well. I know them well, so they were able to be open about it. And there is also some humour in it as well, to a certain extent. I mean, I've got a very odd sense of humour as well, and sometimes I don't particularly do it intentionally, but I can make people feel awkward when they're talking about my cancer,
Right.
and to
Okay.
a point that does amuse me. But it's I you've quickly got to put a damper on that, and you have to have people involved in your life, because that isolation is the worst thing.
So it's
Being
very
being
important then to talk about it, whether you're suffering
absolutely,
cancer or
absolutely.
you know somebody who's got it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one one of the things I will say is, don't be gushing about it.
No.
Okay, don't be gushing about it. Don't go overboard. Hugging all of this. Let it take its own course. How are you? What's been happening to you? That's that sort of thing. There were a couple of people that I knew that went slightly overboard, and with my wife, not particularly me, but it was too much. It was far too much, because it's upsetting enough, where you don't need to be so overwhelmed that
Yeah.
you start crying again. My wife is a strong lady, and she deals with it her own way. She doesn't particularly need that. So that's the big help. I mean, even one of my neighbours, I'm not very religious. Well, I'm not religious, and he's a Methodist, and he came over one day, and it was quite funny, really. And this is how important other people are. He came over and he said that all of the Methodists in the local area were praying for me. I thought, well, all the help you can get, that's absolutely fine by me. But I must praise the staff at the hospital. The staff at Castle Hill Hospital, I cannot say a bad word about them. All the way through, they had that expertise. They also had that honesty as well. There was no holding back. They told you everything that was going off. If they were worried, they explained why they were worried, and we worked through it, because there were a couple of times where. Well, at one stage, they said to Trish, my wife, it was time to get my parents up. I'd gone into kidney failure.
Wow.
And I was on intensive care. I didn't know anything. I didn't know my bottom from my elbow, basically. At that point, they had a huge, great tube in my neck, and I was connected to a dialysis machine. And after 4 days, they said that's fine. Took it all out, and I was back on the wall. Absolutely incredible. But the other thing with this illness, with this disease, I have never, apart from those cold symptoms and a bit of an itchy rash, I've never felt the effects of it. The problems that I've had have been from the chemotherapy. And the chemotherapy is hellish.
Yes.
It really is. They tell you that at the start. It is extremely aggressive. But as one of the doctors said, it has to be more aggressive than the cancer itself.
Well, that's a
it
good
destroys
point.
all of the cells, and it does. It puts you to a point where, well, let's put it this way: in the hospital, there's a lot of toilet humour.
I think there probably has to be, doesn't there?
Yeah, and again in the hospital, what surprised me was that there was humour. You know, people were laughing, even people that were they were dying. They knew they were dying. They had different cancers to me, and that humour was still there. You know, their families were still there. They could still laugh and joke. You know, if one of us did something stupid on the wall, you know, that was it. And you do become very close to those people as well. You've all got something in common. And I was also fortunate that at the same time that I was admitted, they'd first of all put me in a small room with another man about my age who'd been admitted the week before with the same illness. So everything that was happening to him was a week ahead of mine. So I knew what was coming. And he was a bus driver. And he was extreme. It was a bit like the Carry On films. He liked to smoke. So you'd see him at 3 o'clock in the morning with his head stuck out of the morning, puffing a fag. He liked to drink, and he had bottles of Guinness in his locker and a half bottle of whiskey hidden underneath his socks. And yes, the temptation was always there, but I always I can't do that. But again, it got him through, and he reached the same stage as I did. And I haven't spoken to anybody about him for a while, but as far as I know, he's in the same position as me and is back at work driving buses.
Right. Now, let's get back then to where you are right now. So this is what,
right.
3 or 4 year journey you've been on.
Absolutely. And I am better for it. I am better for it.
As a person or physically?
Sorry?
As a person, you're better.
As a person and medically. I mean, at the moment, I have absolutely nothing wrong with me at all. And after this, I'll be going into the garage, and I've got a Zwift ride at 10 o'clock on my bike in the garage. But that's what I've had to work up to. It's been hard work.
But let me take you back to the beginning. So you're 4 years on now. You're physically well. You're mentally well. You feel like you're a better person for it. In the beginning, what was the prognosis? What was expected to happen?
We were looking at 3 months.
Ah.
You're looking at 3 months. That's the usual prognosis. Now, I was, after probably about a fortnight, I was laid on my bed, really unwell, and I started to plan my funeral. I had an A4 sheet of paper, and I started to plan it. What I wanted said, the hymns that I wanted sung. I'm not religious, but I like a nice hymn. Who doesn't? And that's it. But anyway, as I was doing this, one of the Macmillan nurses came in with a clipboard with a sheet of paper on it, and she started out of the blue to ask me questions. All my details, national insurance number, things like this. And I said, hold on. I said, what's this for? Oh, she said that we need to get your PIP sorted out, personal independence payments, a benefit, and also your blue badge.
Oh,
I said, right. Because when you're terminally ill and you've got approximately 3 months to live, they fast track benefits and the blue badge. And I started at that point. I started to laugh. I said, I don't need that. I've got a nice pension. I'm comfortable. Oh no, she said, this is it. So when I actually came out of hospital, there was £162 a week going into my bank account, and a blue badge arrived at the door. and that's what one of the things. I mean, I thought it was quite interesting, but that's one of the things that upset my wife, because at that point that was a sign that things might be going one way, the wrong way. But overcame that, and that was absolutely fine. And one funny part of that is that I contact when I was feeling well. I was going on a 60-mile bike ride. When I was absolutely fine. I actually phoned the benefits people, and they said, "I'd like you to stop this." The lady on the other end of the phone didn't know what to do, because she'd never had that inquiry.
I was going to say, that's never happened before.
She'd never had that inquiry before. So she had to ask a supervisor.
What do we do?
Anyway,
got a madman on the phone.
I know, yeah, absolutely. And I found it really, really difficult to stop this benefit that I didn't want. And it was, eventually it did. I never used a blue badge anyway, because that's, I could walk, so I wasn't, that wasn't a problem. But when you've got a Macmillan nurse sat asking you questions because you're terminally ill, and I was at that point considered terminally ill, that does tend to focus the mind a little bit. And I laid back and I just thought, this is ridiculous. I screwed up the piece of paper, threw it in the bin, let everything take its course, took notice of the doctors, did everything that they said that I should do, had the chemotherapy, and that's where I am now.
And you fought it, and you've beaten it?
No, I'm in what's called first remission.
Right. Now, what does that mean?
Several years ago, they would have considered that I was probably cured.
Yeah.
But now they can look so deeply into your genes, your DNA, and they can still detect it. Right. It's still there. A few years ago, they wouldn't have been able to detect it, but they can still detect it. It's there. There's a good chance that it will return, but I'm prepared for that. I've got 4 years on it so far. If it does come back, I know what the process is.
Are you saying that you're almost accepting that if it does come back, well, then that's not fun?
Well, I will accept the treatment and everything else. I was also very lucky that I didn't need a bone marrow transplant. I went up to hospital in Leeds, St James's in Leeds, and had a discussion with a consultant, thinking that that's what the next stage was going to be. And basically what she said was that I was at a point where the chance of surviving 3 years was possibly equal to or better than surviving the bone marrow transplant.
Oh, what a position.
So at that point, it was 50-50. So she said, we'll leave it and basically see what happens. So again, if it does come back, there will be a process to follow, going through it all again. Whether it will work or not, because one of the problems is infections. I had sepsis twice while I was in hospital, and that's what basically is going to finish you off if anything does. Antibiotics overcame that, and that was fine. I became aware very quickly of as well that I discovered that I wasn't scared of dying. Now, we've all reached the stage where we've lost people in the past, friends, relatives, some an awful lot younger than me. I served 2 years in Northern Ireland. I've seen death. I know what it is. That doesn't frighten me. What I think frightens people is leaving. It's leaving what you've got here, and leaving everything behind.
That then, when you're in a situation where you were, how do you come to terms with dealing with that believing?
Just one of the things was enjoying what you're doing. I mean, I was thinking back. What I did was I thought back to what I enjoyed before I became ill. So, for example, a particular coffee shop that I would like to go into, have lunch. We'd have lunch together. A trip to York, or Beverley, a lovely place. A particular restaurant in Beverley, a particular restaurant in Louth, for example. And they were the things I would look forward to. So I made a point of, when I was discharged each time from hospital, I would go to one of those places, go to Hemswell Antique Centre, which is just 3 miles down the road, visit places that I enjoyed visiting, and rediscover how good that felt when I first started to do it.
Okay, now that's interesting. So that was during your treatment. So,
yes, yeah.
So you look for the little things that you used to enjoy doing, but
absolutely.
You kind of overlooked them. You took them for granted.
Yeah, yes, you did.
Now you're the other side of the big treatments. What's life like now? Is it better, worse, or very different to Mick's life retiring at 50? What are the big differences now you've had that huge, calamitous, life-changing experience? What advice can you give people watching?
It refreshed me. All I can say is it's a sort of refreshment. It refreshed me. It goes back to how I felt when I first finished work, and I was excited over doing things. That comes back. Right. Because it's given you, I suppose to put it rightly, it's given a new lease of life, because it has, it's there. And what I will say to people is, enjoy your moment, enjoy what you're doing now, but don't forget what it was like when you first started doing it. If things start to get stale, leave them, but go back to them and see how it feels again.
That's good advice for life generally.
For life, yes.
If you're in a lucky position to be able to pick and choose the things that you want to do, and just think about the things that you like doing and concentrate on them. Final advice for anyone about to go through what you went through, or friends and family of somebody who is about to go through that?
My advice is, keep your family and your friends close to you. Do not distance yourself from anybody. Keep them close and enjoy their company as well, because that loneliness is the thing that will kill you. And I think that even if you're not poorly, that's good advice anyway. You need people around you, Mick, not work, because I'm basically idle now. I don't want a job.
God forbid! Don't go to work.
No.
Mick, I think you're a great inspiration. Even just looking at you, you're an inspiration, because you're in your early 60s. You look in your early 50s. You look fit and well, and you've got a great smiley attitude to life.
Yeah,
you're a real feel-good pill, and I've got to say a big thank you to you.
No, thank you for having me here. And if it's been useful to people that are watching this, then that's absolutely lovely. And if anybody's watching it on Facebook, if they do want to PM me if they've got any issues, then I'm perfectly happy to have that chat.
Well, Mick, that's very kind, and I'll put Mick's details actually in the details for the video below. Mick, a great pleasure. I'm going to chat to you again.
Okay, that's lovely.
Okay.
Lovely seeing you.
You too. I'll see you at Hemswell Antique Centre sometime.
Oh, well, hopefully, yes. Yeah.
I'm filming there shortly. Cheers.
Okay, cheers. Thank you.